Step off this aircraft now, or security will remove you in cuffs. The operations manager's order echoed through the cabin, humiliating the woman in 12C for everyone to hear. Dana Wyatt didn't argue, didn't plead. She just met his eyes with a look of absolute calm and said 5 words that froze the air. "Document this. I certainly am." Security dragged her down the aisle like she was dangerous, like she was nobody. What they couldn't know, what the phone she'd been holding couldn't show them, was that the woman they were throwing off, Flight 4782, controlled the systems, keeping every plane in their fleet airborne. And in 8 hours, she would pull the plug. George Roth snapped his fingers at the security supervisor hovering near the galley. Marco Finn understood the signal. 2 Chicago police officers stepped through the jetway door, their boots heavy on the aircraft floor. The cabin went silent. 43 passengers watched as uniformed authority closed in on a black woman sitting quietly in seat 12. See her cream sweater and dark jeans, making her look like she was headed to a coffee shop, not a confrontation that would cost an airline $4 billion. In row 14, Bernice Bell, a 6'8" woman who'd seen enough injustice to recognize it instantly, pulled out her phone and hit record. "Ma'am, I don't have time for passengers who think rules don't apply to them." George Roth's voice dripped with the kind of condescension that comes from years of unchecked authority. One of the officers approached Dana's seat, hand resting on his belt. "Step off the plane voluntarily or we'll escort you." Dana looked up, her voice steady, her hands visible and folded in her lap. "Under what authority? I haven't violated any FAA regulation. I have a confirmed ticket. I'm seated. I'm compliant. Under my authority." Roth leaned into the aisle, his face flushed. "This is my aircraft." The officer reached for Dana's arm. "Don't touch me." Dana's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the cabin like a blade. "I know my rights under 14 CFR Part 121. I am not a threat to this flight. I have not disrupted operations. You have no legal basis to remove me." She's being belligerent. Roth looked at the officer like he was giving an order to a dog. "Remove her." Near the galley, Lucas Harvey, a 2-3-year-old junior airline staffer on his 2nd month of work, watched the scene unfold. His hands trembled slightly. He'd been trained to de-escalate, to prioritize customer service. This wasn't that. This was something else. He pulled out his own phone. Bernice Bell's camera captured the moment the officer's hand closed around Dana's wrist, captured the way he yanked her from the seat with enough force that her portfolio fell, papers scattering across the aisle. For just a second, passengers in nearby rows saw corporate letterhead, Meridian Logistics Systems, contract renewal, numbers with too many zeros. Dana didn't fight. She went limp. A tactical choice, a decision made in a fraction of a second. Let them do the work. Let them show everyone exactly who they are. "This is wrong," someone shouted from the back of the cabin. Other voices joined. "You can't do this." Roth spun toward the crowd. "Mind your business or you'll be next." The cabin went silent again, but the phone stayed up. 14 cameras recording. 14 witnesses who would upload footage before the plane even pushed back from the gate. They walked her through Terminal 3, Concourse G, like she was a criminal. Past TSA Checkpoint 3, where agents paused mid-scan to stare. Past the United Airlines Club, where travelers in business suits looked up from their laptops and whispered to each other. Dana's face revealed nothing. No tears, no anger. Just a woman being escorted in handcuffs through one of the busiest airports in America while the world watched. At CPD District 16, they processed her like she was nobody. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings inventoried and bagged. In the holding cell, a 7x9 concrete box that smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat, Dana finally spoke. "I'm entitled to a phone call." The desk sergeant didn't look up from his paperwork. "You'll get your call when I say so. I'm entitled to a call within a reasonable time. Illinois Statute 725, ILCS 510 3-3. Dana sat on the metal bench, her back straight, her hands folded. The sergeant glanced up, annoyed. Another lawyer wannabe. "Sit tight, sweetheart." Dana closed her eyes. Not to rest, to calculate. She'd spent 6 months preparing for this. Not this exact moment, not this specific flight, but the pattern it represented. She knew how long it took for viral videos to gain traction. She knew the operational timeline for Apex Airlines' evening scheduling. She knew exactly how long she could afford to wait in this cell before the pieces she'd already set in motion would start falling into place. What the sergeant couldn't know, what George Roth and Marco Finn and those two officers couldn't know, was that Dana Wyatt had spent the last 6 months preparing for this exact scenario. Not this specific confrontation, but the pattern it represented. The casual cruelty, the assumption that she didn't matter, the belief that power came from a uniform and a title instead of leverage and preparation. While Dana sat in that 7x9 cell at CPD District 16, her absence from a meeting 800 miles away in San Francisco was about to trigger a cascade of events that would cost Apex Airlines more than they'd earn in a decade. If you've ever been treated like you don't belong, if you've ever had someone look right through you like you were invisible, stay with this story. Because what happens next isn't just about one woman getting justice. It's about what happens when the person you dismiss turns out to be the only person keeping your world from collapsing. Hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when they finally realize who they just arrested. Step off this aircraft now, or security will remove you in cuffs. The operations manager's order echoed through the cabin, humiliating the woman in 12C for everyone to hear. Dana Wyatt didn't argue, didn't plead. She just met his eyes with a look of absolute calm and said 5 words that froze the air. Document this. I certainly am. Security dragged her down the aisle like she was dangerous, like she was nobody. What they couldn't know, what the phone she'd been holding couldn't show them, was that the woman they were throwing off Flight 4782 controlled the systems, keeping every plane in their fleet airborne. And in 8 hours, she would pull the plug. But to understand how a black woman in a cream sweater and dark jeans came to hold the power to ground an entire airline, we need to go back 6 months. Back to a corner office on the 87th floor of Willis Tower in Chicago, where Dana Wyatt sat behind a desk overlooking Lake Michigan, reviewing a complaint that would change everything. Dana Wyatt wasn't just any CEO. She was the founder and chief executive of Meridian Logistics Systems, a company that specialized in something most passengers never think about: the invisible architecture that makes flying possible. Supply chain optimization, aviation logistics, the systems that tell airlines where their fuel is, who's flying, what plane, which parts need replacing, and when. 14 major airlines depended on Meridian's platform. One of them was Apex Airlines, and Apex had just made a very expensive mistake. The contract was called Project Horizon, $4.2 billion over 7 years, exclusive. Apex Airlines had signed it 3 years earlier when their legacy systems were collapsing under the weight of expansion. Dana's company had built them a new nervous system from scratch: fuel routing, crew scheduling, maintenance logistics, parts inventory. Every critical function now ran through Meridian servers. But tucked into that contract, on page 73, was Clause 12.7, the Vendor Dignity Clause. It stated, in plain language, that Meridian Logistics could terminate the agreement immediately if Apex Airlines engaged in discriminatory practices affecting Meridian personnel or representatives. Dana had insisted on that clause. Her lawyers thought it was overkill. Dana knew better. 3 months before that flight, a manila envelope arrived at Dana's office. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Miss Wyatt, I need your help. The drive contained 47 documented incidents, timestamps, gate numbers, flight numbers, witness statements, all compiled by Marcus Cole, a black pilot who'd been flying for Apex for 8 years. Marcus had documented everything: the extra security screenings when he arrived in uniform, the passenger complaints about having a black captain, the gate agents who questioned his credentials, the patterns that added up to something systemic. He'd filed complaints with Apex's internal HR, all dismissed. So he'd come to Dana. Dana spent 3 weeks investigating. Quietly, what she found made her blood run cold. An internal Apex memo titled Passenger Appearance Protocol. It never used the words race or skin color, but the code was transparent. Phrases like heightened security awareness and demographic risk factors and pre-boarding assessment based on presentation. It was racial profiling wrapped in corporate language. And it was policy. That's when Dana made a decision that would cost Apex billions. She would test the system herself. No private jet, no first-class ticket, no corporate badge. She booked a coach seat on Apex Flight 4782 from Chicago to San Francisco. Cream sweater, dark jeans, natural hair. She wanted to see what Marcus Cole saw. what thousands of black passengers saw. She wanted them to treat her like she was nobody, because when they did, she would show them exactly who nobody was. The morning of the flight, Dana woke at 5:30 a.m. in her modest Gold Coast apartment. Not the penthouse people expected. She'd kept the same 2-bedroom she'd rented as a graduate student. It reminded her of where she'd come from, Bronzeville, the South Side. Daughter of a CTA bus driver who'd worked the Red Line for 30 years. Dana had watched her mother be followed through stores on Michigan Avenue, watched security guards accuse her of stealing, watched her mother's dignity stripped away in public while white shoppers pretended not to see. Her mother never fought back, not physically, but on the bus ride home, she'd held Dana's hand and said something Dana never forgot. Get powerful enough that they can't ignore you, baby. Not powerful enough to be safe, powerful enough that when they come for you, you can make them regret it. Dana had taken that lesson seriously. University of Chicago MBA. Built Meridian Logistics from a startup in a WeWork to a Fortune 500 company in 3 years. Never forgot where she came from. Never forgot what her mother taught her. And never, ever forgot to build insurance policies into her contracts. That morning, Dana packed her portfolio with surgical precision. Copy of the Apex contract with clause 12.7 highlighted. Marcus Cole's evidence file on an encrypted drive. Emergency contact list. Business cards for Christine Raymond, her attorney of 15 years, who'd been with her since Meridian was just an idea. And she programmed her phone with a one-touch dial, Christine's direct line. If things went wrong, one button would activate Protocol Icarus. Dana wasn't flying to San Francisco for vacation. She had a meeting scheduled for 2 p.m. Pacific time with the Apex Airlines board of directors. The agenda: contract renewal. Apex wanted a 5-year extension on Project Horizon. They were desperate for it. Because here's what most people don't understand about modern aviation. Airlines don't actually control their own operations anymore. They've outsourced the complexity to companies like Meridian. Apex Airlines operated 847 aircraft, employed 52,000 people, generated billions in revenue. But without Meridian systems, they couldn't track fuel, couldn't schedule crews, couldn't order replacement parts, couldn't function. The industry has a term for this: critical vendor dependency. Dana Wyatt was Apex's critical vendor. She controlled the off switch, and Apex's executives were about to learn that lesson the hard way. So when Dana sat in that CPD holding cell 3 hours later, handcuffed, her wrist bruising, she wasn't panicking. She was calculating. 3 p.m. Chicago time. The Apex board meeting had started without her. Executives in San Francisco were confused, checking their phones, wondering where Meridian's CEO was. But Christine Raymond knew exactly where Dana was, because Dana hadn't checked in at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, and Christine Raymond had standing instructions for that scenario. Activate Protocol Icarus. At 3:47 p.m. Chicago time, as Dana Wyatt sat handcuffed in a CPD holding room under fluorescent lights that flickered like a failing system, Christine Raymond looked at her watch in a San Francisco conference room, nodded to Patricia Monroe, Meridian's COO and Dana's college roommate from their University of Chicago days, and opened a leather briefcase containing documents that would change aviation history. Protocol Icarus was live. If this story is hitting you in the chest right now, if you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, subscribe to this channel. Because what happens next will restore your faith that preparation plus power equals justice. And trust me, you don't want to miss the moment Apex Airlines realizes who they just arrested. At 4:15 p.m., inside the fluorescent-lit holding room at Chicago Police District 16, Dana Wyatt was finally allowed her phone call. Her fingers were steady as she dialed, despite the bruising already forming around her wrist where the handcuffs had bitten into skin. Christine Raymond answered on the first ring. "Dana?" "It happened," Dana said, her voice low and controlled. "Worse than we expected. Are you okay?" "Bruised wrist. Ego intact." Dana glanced at the officer standing near the door, pretending not to listen. "Did Patricia activate?" Christine's pause lasted exactly 2 seconds. 20 minutes ago. It's already moving. Dana closed her eyes. The machine was in motion. 800 miles west, in a 32nd floor conference room overlooking San Francisco Bay, Patricia Monroe stood at the head of a polished mahogany table. Across from her sat 9 people who believed they held all the power in the room. Richard Sterling, CEO of Apex Airlines, checked his Rolex for the 3rd time. Jennifer Walsh, the COO, drummed manicured nails against her leather portfolio. 7 board members shifted in executive chairs that cost more than most people earned in a month. Miss Wyatt has been delayed, Patricia said, her voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what's about to happen. I'm authorized to proceed without her. Sterling leaned forward, impatience radiating from every line of his body. Let's cut to it. We want the extension. Name your price. Patricia reached into her briefcase and slid a document across the table. It landed in front of Sterling with a whisper of expensive paper against expensive wood. There won't be an extension. We're invoking Clause 12.7. If you've ever watched someone's world collapse in real time, hit that subscribe button, because what happens in the next 60 seconds changes everything. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. The board members exchanged confused glances. Fingers flipped through contract pages, searching. Walsh found it first. Her voice faltered as she read aloud. Vendor may terminate immediately if client engages in discriminatory practices affecting vendor personnel or representatives. Sterling's face flushed. What are you talking about? We haven't. Patricia pressed a button on the remote in her hand. The conference room screen illuminated, flooding the room with blue light. The board members turned as one, like passengers on a plane sensing turbulence. The video montage began. Professional editing, crystal clear audio. Marcus Cole appeared first, facing the camera in his pilot uniform, his voice steady as he recounted incident after incident. Then security footage rolled, time-stamped and damning. Black passengers being removed from flights. 7 incidents. 7 different airports. 7 different excuses that all meant the same thing. Internal Apex emails scrolled across the screen, coded language highlighted in yellow. A screenshot of a memo titled Passenger Appearance Protocol filled the frame, its bureaucratic euphemisms unable to hide what it really was. Patricia's voiceover cut through the silence. 47 documented incidents over 18 months. A board member in the back row whispered something to the person beside him. Another reached for water with a shaking hand. And, as of 3 hours ago, Patricia continued, we have a new incident. The screen switched. Cell phone footage, shaky but clear. The audio hit first. This is my aircraft. George Roth's voice, arrogant and absolute. Then the visual, Dana Wyatt being dragged down the aisle of Flight 4782, her cream sweater twisted, her face calm even as security treated her like a threat. The timestamp in the corner read, 2 hours, 31 minutes ago. Sterling's face drained of color. He looked like a man watching his career end in high definition. Back at O'Hare Terminal 3, news crews were setting up lights near Gate K-17. An anonymous tip, placed by Meridian's PR team exactly 45 minutes earlier, had brought them running. Bernice Bell stood in front of 3 cameras, her phone still in her hand, the same phone that had captured everything. I saw it all, she told the NBC Chicago reporter. That woman didn't do nothing wrong. Nothing. And they treated her like a criminal. The video was already going viral. #dragged, #Apex Airlines, #flying while black. The internet, that sleeping dragon, had opened its eyes. Lucas Harvey, the junior staff member who'd watched from the galley, stood near the departure monitors and recorded his own video. I quit, he said, looking directly into his camera. I can't work for a company that does this. I won't. His video would hit 2.3 million views by midnight. In a social media monitoring room in downtown Chicago, analysts watched the numbers climb. 47,000 tweets in 90 minutes. The trending topics list reorganized itself in real time. #boycott Apex climbed to number 3 nationally. Celebrities started weighing in, sharing their own stories, their own humiliations. The algorithm had decided this mattered. The Apex Airlines stock ticker, displayed on a dozen trading platforms, began its descent. Down 6% in after-hours trading, then 7, then 8. Back in San Francisco, Sterling tried to mount a defense. This is clearly a misunderstanding. We'll investigate. Patricia cut him off with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The investigation is complete. We conducted it. Walsh leaned forward, her voice rising. You can't just terminate. We have millions invested in integration. Clause 12.7 is unambiguous, Patricia said. The contract allows immediate termination. Sterling stood, his chair scraping against polished floor. If you pull your systems, we can't operate. Patricia met his eyes. I'm aware. The silence in that conference room was the sound of empires realizing they're built on sand. Comment below if you've ever been in a room where you watched someone realize they've made a catastrophic mistake. Share this story with someone who needs to see what accountability actually looks like." Then Patricia said the words that changed the trajectory of the entire meeting. However, Miss Wyatt authorized me to offer one alternative. Every board member leaned forward. Hope is a powerful drug. Apex Airlines has 72 hours to implement the following. Patricia's voice was steady as she counted on her fingers. 1. Immediate termination of George Roth and Marco Finn. 2. Establishment of a $50 million fund for discrimination remediation. 3. Independent civil rights audit. Auditor selected by Meridian. 4. Public apology from CEO Richard Sterling. 5. Dana Wyatt appointed to the Apex Board of Directors with veto power over all personnel policies. Sterling's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's extortion. No, Patricia said. It's accountability. You have 72 hours. After that, we pull the plug. The conference room door opened. An assistant whispered something to Walsh. Her face went gray. "The stock," she said. "Trading's been suspended." At that exact moment, back in Chicago, the desk sergeant at District 16 received a phone call from the commissioner's office. The conversation lasted 11 seconds. When he hung up, his entire demeanor transformed like someone had flipped a switch inside him. He walked to the holding room, opened the door. "Miss Wyatt," he said, and the title alone was an apology. "I apologize for the delay." Dana collected her belongings methodically. Phone, wallet, portfolio, miraculously intact. Her wrist throbbed, but she didn't let it show. Outside District 16, Christine Raymond leaned against a black town car, illuminated by streetlights just beginning to flicker on. Dana slid into the back seat, and Christine handed her a tablet without a word. The San Francisco feed was live. Dana watched Patricia present the evidence, watched the board members' faces cycle through denial and horror and fear. She watched her own arrest play out on that conference room screen. A slight smile touched her lips, there and gone. "She's good," Christine said. "She learned from the best." Dana set the tablet down. "What's the stock doing?" "Down 9% now. After hours trading suspended." Dana looked out the window at Chicago passing by, the city she'd built her empire in, the city that had just watched her get dragged out of an airport in handcuffs. By 6 p.m. Chicago time, Dana Wyatt was free. But for Apex Airlines, the real imprisonment was just beginning. Because what happens when you humiliate someone who holds your entire operation in her hands isn't revenge, it's mathematics. While Dana sat in that town car watching Chicago's evening lights blur past, while the internet exploded with hashtags and outrage, while Apex's stock plummeted and their board scrambled for damage control, something else was happening. Something nobody was talking about yet. Something that would make the discrimination scandal look like a warm-up. At the Federal Aviation Administration's Chicago office, Director Sarah Chin sat at her desk long after most of her staff had gone home. Her computer chimed with an incoming email, encrypted. The subject line read, "Apex Airlines, Safety Compliance Question." The sender was listed as anonymous, but the attachment was anything but anonymous. Maintenance log discrepancies. 23 aircraft. Deferred maintenance beyond FAA limits. Sarah Chin had been with the FAA for 19 years. She knew what she was looking at, and she knew what it meant. Marcus Cole hadn't just been documenting discrimination. While he was cataloging every humiliation, every racist comment, every time he was treated like he didn't belong in a cockpit, he'd also been watching something else. The maintenance logs, the safety reports, the warnings that Meridian's system kept flagging that Apex management kept overriding. 23 aircraft flying with maintenance deferred beyond federal limits, not by days, by months. Apex had been cutting corners to save money, gambling that nothing would go wrong, betting against physics and probability and the lives of every passenger who trusted them. If that makes your stomach turn, if you're realizing you might have flown on one of those planes, share this story right now, because what Dana does next might be the reason you're still alive. Dana's phone rang at 7:30 p.m., unknown number. She answered anyway. I found something worse than the discrimination. Marcus Cole's voice was tight, controlled. The voice of a man who'd been carrying a weight too heavy to bear alone. He explained the maintenance issues, the deferred repairs, the 23 aircraft that should have been grounded months ago. Dana listened without interrupting, her legal pad filling with notes she would never need because her mind was recording every word. When he finished, Dana asked the question that defined everything that came after. "What do you want me to do with this?" "Destroy them," Marcus said. "They deserve it." Dana looked out her apartment window at Hyde Park, at the neighborhood where she'd chosen to live, despite being able to afford anywhere in the city. If we expose this now, 52,000 people lose jobs. The flying public loses confidence. The entire aviation industry takes a hit. So we let them get away with it? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. After everything? No, we make them fix it, and we make sure they can never hide it again. That's the difference between revenge and reform. Revenge feels good for a day. Reform saves lives for decades. Comment below if you understand that difference. If you've ever had to choose between destruction and transformation, because that choice is what separates people who want justice from people who want change. Dana called Patricia in San Francisco. Add 2 more demands to the list. We're already at 5, Patricia said. How much more do you want to squeeze? Demand 6, immediate maintenance audit. Meridian gets full access to every aircraft, every log, every override. Demand 7, real-time safety reporting system controlled by Meridian. Any maintenance issue flagged by our system gets elevated directly to the board. No more management overrides. Patricia was quiet for 3 seconds. This gives you permanent oversight. That's the point. They won't just apologize, they'll change. By 8 p.m., CNN had picked up the story. The chyron running across the bottom of the screen read, "Tech CEO dragged off plane she helped build." The revelation hit like a second wave. Dana Wyatt wasn't just a passenger. She was the architect of Apex's entire operational system. The woman they'd handcuffed and humiliated was the same woman who made their planes fly on time, who tracked their fuel, who scheduled their crews. The irony was so thick you could taste it. A reporter stood on the Chicago Riverwalk interviewing passengers from Flight 4, 7, 8, 2. Bernice Bell had become a folk hero overnight. Her footage replayed on every news network. Her words quoted in every article. "I saw everything. That woman didn't do nothing wrong. Nothing. And they treated her like a criminal." Lucas Harvey's resignation video had hit 2.3 million views. Comments poured in by the thousands. Flight attendants, gate agents, pilots, all sharing their own stories, all saying they'd seen this happen before, all saying they were tired of being complicit. Inside Apex's San Francisco headquarters, an emergency board meeting stretched into its 3rd hour. Richard Sterling wanted to fight. "We can find another vendor. We're not beholden to one company." Jennifer Walsh, the COO, looked at him like he'd suggested they could fly planes using thoughts and prayers. In 72 hours, integration takes months. We'd have to ground the entire fleet. Do you understand what that means? A board member flipped through financial projections on his tablet. "We're down 12% now. If we ground the fleet, we're done. Bankruptcy in 6 weeks. Another board member, the one who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "What about the maintenance issues? If those emails leak, if the FAA finds out we've been flying aircraft with deferred maintenance, we're not just facing financial problems, we're facing criminal charges." Sterling's face went gray. He was cornered, and he knew it. But here's what the public didn't know yet. The news coverage was all about discrimination, the arrest, the handcuffs, the viral video. Nobody was talking about the 23 aircraft. Nobody knew about the safety violations. That information was still locked in an encrypted email sitting on Sarah Chen's desk at the FAA, known only to Dana, Marcus, and now Patricia. Dana's strategy was surgical. Use the public pressure on discrimination to force compliance on safety. 2 fights, 1 battle, maximum leverage. Dana sat in her Hyde Park apartment, the modest 2-bedroom she'd refused to leave even after making her first $100 million. Christine Raymond sat across from her, reviewing documents that would form the backbone of their next moves. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of traffic outside and the occasional rustle of paper. Dana's phone rang. Unknown number again. She looked at Christine, who nodded. Dana answered, "This is Dana Wyatt." The voice on the other end was careful, controlled, the voice of a man trying very hard not to sound desperate. "Miss Wyatt, this is Richard Sterling. Can we talk?" When the CEO of the company that just had you arrested calls to talk, you have 2 choices. You can make him sweat, or you can make him beg. Dana Wyatt chose option 3. She made him listen. Dana's phone rang at 8:47 p.m. Unknown number. She answered on the second ring. "Miss Wyatt, this is Richard Sterling. Can we talk?" When the CEO of the company that just had you arrested calls to talk, you have two choices. You can make him sweat, or you can make him beg. Dana Wyatt chose option 3. She made him listen. "Miss Wyatt, I want to apologize personally for what happened today." Dana's voice was controlled, surgical. "You're not apologizing to me. You're trying to save your company." Both can be true. Tell me, Mr. Sterling, how many other Dana Wyatts have been dragged off your planes in the past 5 years? The pause stretched long enough for Sterling to realize he'd walked into a trap. "I don't have that data in front of me." 73. "I do have that data. Should I continue?" If you've ever had to teach someone a lesson they should have learned decades ago, hit that like button right now, because what Dana's about to do is a masterclass in negotiation. Your representative presented 7 demands. Some are challenging. Challenging like solving a logistics problem, or challenging like admitting your company has a systemic racism problem. The board seat request is unusual. Dana cut him off. "Mr. Sterling, in 68 hours, your plane stopped flying. Not because of a strike, not because of weather, because the systems that tell your pilots where to fly, your mechanics what to fix, and your fuel trucks where to go will simply stop. Do you know what happens to an airline stock when the planes can't fly?" Sterling's voice went quiet. "I can imagine. Here's what you can't imagine. I'm adding an 8th demand. Ms. Wyatt. Marcus Cole, the pilot who first reported these issues, he's been on administrative leave for 3 months. You'll reinstate him with back pay, promote him to check airman, and issue a public commendation for his integrity." Sterling paused. "That's actually reasonable. I'm not finished. You'll also create a protected whistleblower program. Any employee can report discrimination or safety concerns directly to the board, and I, as a board member, will personally review every report. You're not just fixing a problem, you're taking over." Dana's voice remained steady. "No, Mr. Sterling, I'm making sure you can't create this problem again." Then Sterling asked the question that revealed everything. "Why didn't you just destroy us? You could have leaked the maintenance issues. The FAA would have grounded our fleet. We'd be bankrupt in a month." Dana looked out at the Chicago skyline, the city lights reflecting in her window. The pause stretched long enough that Sterling thought the line had gone dead. "Because 52,000 people work for your airline. They didn't drag me off that plane. They didn't write discriminatory policies. They show up, do their jobs, and deserve better leadership." Sterling's voice changed. "Genuine surprise. I appreciate that." Don't appreciate it. Earn it. You have 66 hours left. Share this story with someone who needs to understand that power isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. Tag them right now. In San Francisco, the Apex board reconvened in that same conference room, the one where Patricia Monroe had just dismantled their entire worldview. Sterling stood at the head of the table, looking like a man who'd just survived something fatal. "She's adding an 8th demand. Marcus Cole gets reinstated, promoted, and a public commendation, plus a whistleblower protection program that reports directly to the board." Walsh leaned back in her chair. "If we fight and lose, we lose everything. If we accept, we survive, but change." A board member from the far end spoke up. "What about Sterling? If we accept these demands, his authority is essentially neutered." Sterling stood, and for the first time that day, he looked like a leader instead of a defendant. "My authority got us into this. Maybe less of my authority is exactly what we need." The vote came quickly, 6-3, accept Dana's demands. In Chicago, Christine Raymond arrived at Dana's apartment with a bottle of champagne she'd been saving for exactly this moment. She found Dana standing at the window, still in the same cream sweater from that morning, now wrinkled and carrying the memory of handcuffs. "You know they're going to accept, right?" "I know." Christine poured 2 glasses. "So why did you give Sterling the out? You could have crushed him." Dana turned from the window. "My mother once told me, baby, when you get power, use it to lift, not to crush." Sterling's learning. "That's worth more than his resignation. You're a better person than me." "No, I'm just strategic." A humiliated Sterling becomes an enemy. A reformed Sterling becomes a cautionary tale. While they talked, 800 miles away, in a different city entirely, Marcus Cole sat at his kitchen table with documents spread across the surface. Maintenance logs, safety reports, evidence of corners cut, and regulations ignored. He opened his encrypted email and typed an address he'd memorized weeks ago. FAA Director Sarah Chin. The subject line read, "Apex Airlines Safety Compliance Question." He attached the files, hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, then hit send. Insurance. That's what Dana had called it when she'd asked him to prepare this backup plan. If Apex reneges on the deal, if they try to weasel out of their promises, the FAA will have grounds to ground the entire fleet anyway. Comment below if you've ever had to build a backup plan for your backup plan, because that's how you win wars, not battles. By midnight, the pieces were in position. Apex Airlines had 64 hours to accept terms or face extinction. The stock had stabilized at down 14%. The viral videos had been viewed 10 million times. News crews were camped outside Apex headquarters in 3 cities. But what no one, not Sterling, not the board, not even Dana, anticipated was that someone else was watching. A senator from Illinois who sat on the Transportation Committee. A CNN producer who'd been following the story since Bernice Bell's video first went viral. A movement that was building momentum like a plane on a runway, accelerating towards something that couldn't be stopped. And that someone was about to make this a national story. By 6 a.m. the next morning, CNN broke the story nationwide. Tech CEO's arrest exposes airlines' systemic discrimination. The headline scrolled across screens in airport terminals, hotel lobbies, kitchen counters from coast to coast. Bernice Bell's video had hit 10 million views overnight. The algorithm had done its work. Lucas Harvey's resignation, recorded in real time at Gate K17, was being analyzed by legal experts on 3 different networks. And Clause 12.7, that obscure piece of contract language Dana had insisted on 3 years earlier, was suddenly the most talked about legal provision in America. CNBC opened with Apex Airlines stock plummeting 18%. Trading halted twice in the first hour. Analysts scrambled to quantify what happens when public outrage meets corporate dependency. The numbers kept getting worse. If you've ever wondered whether one person's courage can actually move the needle, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens in the next 12 hours proves that documentation plus leverage equals transformation. Don't just watch this happen. Be part of the community that believes accountability matters. By 8 a.m., a senator from Illinois, member of the Transportation Committee, was calling for congressional hearings. Her tweet went viral within minutes. No American should be dragged off a plane for the crime of existing while black. Apex Airlines must answer for this. By 9 a.m., a House resolution had been introduced. The Passenger Bill of Rights Enhancement Act. Dana's arrest had become legislative catalyst. One incident, captured on camera, was about to rewrite federal aviation policy. The cultural moment was undeniable. Hashtag Dana Wyatt trended worldwide. Hashtag Clause .127 sparked thousands of people pulling out their own contracts, checking for protections they'd never thought to demand. Hashtag Flying While Black opened a floodgate of stories that had been suppressed for years. Athletes shared their experiences. Actors described being questioned in first class. Musicians posted screenshots of discriminatory treatment they documented but never released. Some announced they were switching airlines entirely, publicly boycotting Apex. The economics of humiliation were being calculated in real time. At 10 a.m., Dana held a press conference. Not at a hotel, not at Meridian's corporate headquarters, at the DuSable Museum of African American History in Bronzeville, the neighborhood where she'd grown up, where her mother had taught her that power without roots is just performance. Dana walked to the podium in a Navy power suit, composed no visible injuries except the careful way she held her left wrist. Yesterday, I was removed from Apex Airlines Flight 4782 for the offense of occupying a seat I purchased. I was handcuffed, detained, and treated as a criminal. Not because I violated any regulation, not because I threatened anyone's safety, but because someone with a uniform and a title decided I didn't belong. This isn't about me. I'm privileged. I have resources, lawyers, and a platform. What about the 73 other people this happened to who didn't? What about Marcus Cole, the pilot who tried to report these issues and was punished? What about the thousands of black travelers who simply accept humiliation as the cost of flying? I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in reform. Apex Airlines will change or they will fail. Not because I'm destroying them, but because systems that dehumanize people eventually destroy themselves. To every person who's been told they don't belong, document everything, know your rights, and never let anyone convince you that dignity is negotiable. Then Dana looked directly into the camera and delivered the line that would be shared 4.7 million times in 6 hours. And to George Roth, the operations manager who had me arrested, you were wrong about who I am, but more importantly, you were wrong about what power actually looks like. Comment below if you've ever had to teach someone what power actually looks like. Share this with someone who needs to remember that documentation is protection. Tag someone who's been dismissed and came back stronger. At 2 p.m., Richard Sterling held his own press conference. His hands shook slightly as he read from prepared remarks. He announced acceptance of all 8 demands. George Roth and Marco Finn terminated effective immediately. $50 million committed to a discrimination remediation fund. Dana Wyatt appointed to the Apex Board of Directors. Marcus Cole reinstated with promotion. Independent civil rights audit scheduled. Sterling's voice cracked on the apology. I failed. The leadership of this company failed. We will do better. Dana watched the press conference from her office at Meridian, Christine Raymond standing beside her. You won, Christine said. Dana's response was immediate. We'll see. Talk is easy. Action is hard. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Cole. Thank you. Not just for me, for all of us. Dana replied without hesitation. Thank you for being brave first. That matters more. The stock market reacted with cautious optimism. Apex stabilized at 14% down, but no longer falling. An analyst on Bloomberg put it simply, the market is pricing in survival. Painful changes, but survival. Meridian stock climbed 7%. Investors were learning what Dana had always known. The market values companies with strong ethical positions. But here's what the news cameras didn't show. What even Sterling didn't know yet. The real revelation wasn't Dana's power. It was what she planned to do with it. Because in 48 hours, Dana would walk into her first Apex board meeting. And she was bringing documents that would change not just one airline, but the entire industry. Public victory is satisfying, but systemic change? That requires something else. It requires walking into the room where decisions are made, sitting at the table where power lives, and refusing to leave until the system itself transforms. Dana Wyatt had won the battle, now came the war. 48 hours after Richard Sterling's press conference, the aviation industry was in full panic mode. United Airlines announced an enhanced passenger dignity protocol. Delta created an independent discrimination review board. American suspended 2 managers pending investigation. The industry trade group called an emergency meeting. Every airline in America was scrambling to prove they weren't the next Apex. Dana Wyatt had triggered a copycat effect that would reshape an entire industry. Dana's office at Meridian Logistics became a pilgrimage site. Letters arrived by the hundreds. A handwritten note from an elderly black woman in Alabama, "Thank you for fighting for us." An email from a young Latina lawyer in Miami, "You inspired me to file a complaint against my firm." A video message from an Asian American family in Seattle. Their 8-year-old daughter looked into the camera and said she wanted to be a CEO now, just like Dana Wyatt. Dana read every single one, personally responded to more than 40, because she understood something most powerful people forget. The people watching matter more than the people in power. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever needed someone to fight when you couldn't, share this story right now. Someone in your network needs to see what's possible when one person refuses to stay silent. The phone calls started coming from places Dana never expected. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund wanted to collaborate on airline industry reform. The Transportation Workers Union reached out because their members dealt with discrimination too. Disability rights advocates called because wheelchair users face similar treatment. Dana realized her incident had opened a door for a movement much bigger than herself. This wasn't just about race anymore. It was about power, about who gets dignity and who has to beg for it. Law schools started teaching Clause 12.7 as a case study in strategic contract negotiation. Business schools dissected Dana's approach. Harvard Business Review published an article titled "The Dana Wyatt Playbook: How to Negotiate from a Position of Moral Authority." Contracts nationwide were being rewritten to include dignity clauses. Dana had created a legal template that would protect vulnerable people for generations. In Memphis, a 17-year-old high school student named Jamal created an app called Know Your Rights When Flying. It included FAA regulations, passenger bill of rights, how to file complaints, recording best practices. The app got 2.3 million downloads in its first week. When reporters asked Jamal why he built it, he said, "Dana Wyatt showed us that knowledge is power. I just wanted to make sure everyone has access to that power. But late at night, in her Hyde Park apartment, Dana sat alone and stared at her bruised wrist. The marks had faded from purple to yellow-green, but they were still there. Reminders. She thought about the holding cell, the fear she hadn't let anyone see, the moment when she wasn't sure if she'd made the right choice, if fighting back was worth what it might cost. Her phone rang. Her mother. "Baby, I saw what they did to you." "I'm okay, Mama." "No, you're not. And that's okay too. You can be strong and hurt at the same time." Dana's voice cracked. The tears she'd been holding for days finally broke through. "They treated me like I was nothing, but you showed them everything." Comment below if you've ever had someone validate your pain while also reminding you of your power. That's what community does. That's what we're building here. The death threats came too. Anonymous messages calling her a race baiter, an extortionist, everything wrong with America. The FBI investigated the most serious ones. Christine Raymond insisted on personal security. Dana refused. "I won't live in fear." "You can't fix the system if you're dead," Christine shot back. Dana compromised. Discreet protection. 2 former Secret Service agents who dressed like corporate executives and kept their distance. Enough to stop an attack. Not enough to make her feel like a prisoner. Patricia Monroe moved back to Chicago from the San Francisco office. "You need people around you who remember why you're doing this," she told Dana. Marcus Cole visited Dana's office one afternoon carrying a small box. Inside was a model airplane with an inscription on the base. "To the woman who taught me that grounding yourself in principle can ground an entire fleet." Dana placed it on her desk. It's still there. 30 days after the incident, the numbers told a story of systematic change. 127 airline employees filed discrimination complaints, protected by new whistleblower policies Dana had forced into existence. 14 managers were terminated or disciplined across 6 airlines. 3 airlines adopted Clause 12.7 inches their vendor contracts. Congressional hearings were scheduled. The Department of Transportation announced an industry-wide audit. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune cornered Dana outside Meridian's offices. "Some say you're going too far, that you're using one incident to wage war on an entire industry. What do you say?" Dana stopped walking, looked directly at the camera the reporter's crew was holding. "I say that when you live your entire life navigating systems that weren't built for you, that actively work against you, you develop a choice. Accept it or change it. I'm not at war with an industry. I'm at war with the idea that some people's dignity is optional." The clip went viral, again. But dignity for individuals, while essential, wasn't Dana's endgame. Because in 3 days, she would walk into her first Apex Airlines board meeting, and she was about to reveal that the $4.2 billion contract they thought they'd saved was actually the key to transforming the entire aviation industry. Not through punishment, through a model so radical, so effective, that other airlines would beg to adopt it. This wasn't about one company. It never was. 45 days after Dana Wyatt was dragged off, Flight 4000, 782 inches handcuffs, she walked into Apex Airlines headquarters in San Francisco wearing a Navy suit and carrying the same portfolio that had scattered across the cabin floor. Beside her walked Marcus Cole, the pilot who'd first documented the discrimination, now serving as her special advisor. The board members shifted in their seats as she entered. The first black woman to sit at their table, the vendor who'd nearly destroyed them. The woman they'd underestimated so catastrophically that it cost them $2 billion in market value. Richard Sterling stood, his smile tight. "Miss Wyatt, welcome to the board." Dana set her portfolio on the table with deliberate care. "Thank you." Shall we begin with agenda item 1, the real cost of what happened? She pressed a button on her laptop. Numbers filled the conference room screen. Stock value lost, $2.1 billion in market capitalization. Customer defections, 340,000 loyalty program cancellations. Corporate accounts lost, 23 companies had switched to competitors. Legal settlements pending, $18 million estimated. And at the bottom of the slide, in bold letters, reputation repair costs, immeasurable. Sterling's face had gone pale. "We knew it was bad." "This is the cost of your culture," Dana said. "Now let me show you the cost of fixing it." If you've ever watched someone have to face the exact price of their mistakes, hit that subscribe button right now, because what Dana's about to propose will either save this company or prove they learned nothing. And you need to see which one it is. The next slide appeared. Project Compass. Dana stood and began to walk the board through 5 components that would reshape not just Apex Airlines, but the entire aviation industry. Component 1, Real-Time Bias Interruption System, AI-powered analysis of every customer service interaction. The system flags discriminatory language patterns in real time, sends immediate alerts to supervisors, and mandates monthly bias training for any employee whose interactions get flagged. No more hoping someone reports it, no more he said, she said. The system catches it as it happens. A board member shifted uncomfortably. Dana continued. Component 2, Passenger Advocacy Office, completely independent, reports directly to this board, not to management, investigates every discrimination complaint, issues public quarterly reports. And here's the critical part. Their recommendations are binding. If they say someone needs to be terminated, that person gets terminated. No appeals to the CEO. No protection for executives. She clicked to the next slide. Component 3, Employee Whistleblower Protection. Anonymous reporting system for discrimination and safety concerns. Financial rewards for substantiated reports. Full legal protection. Zero tolerance for retaliation. If you fire someone for reporting, you get sued into bankruptcy. The board members were leaning back now, arms crossed. Dana smiled slightly. She'd expected resistance. Component 4, Community Advisory Council. Rotating panel of community leaders and civil rights advocates. They review every customer-facing policy before you implement it, and they have veto power. If they say a policy has discriminatory potential, it doesn't happen. She paused, letting that sink in. And component 5, the dignity audit. Every route, every hub, every quarter. Mystery shoppers from diverse backgrounds fly your planes and document their experiences. Public scoring system, published online. And here's the part that's going to hurt. Executive bonuses are tied directly to dignity metrics. You get paid when passengers are treated with respect. You don't get paid when they're not. The board member who'd been shifting in his seat finally spoke. How much will this cost? Implementation, $180 million over 3 years. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers. A board member in the back actually laughed, the sound bitter and disbelieving. Dana let them react. Then she spoke over the noise. The discrimination cost you $2.1 billion in 45 days. This is a 92% discount on doing the right thing. Questions? Jennifer Walsh, the COO who'd argued against accepting Dana's original demands, leaned forward. This seems invasive. Are we not allowed to manage our own company? You managed your company into a discrimination lawsuit, Dana said, her voice level. I'm offering you a path to manage it into something better. Another board member spoke up. What if we just don't do this? Dana met his eyes. Then I'll know that the apologies were performance art, and Clause 12.7 will activate permanently. Choose. The silence in that room was the sound of people realizing they'd already lost. Sterling called for a vote, all in favor of adopting Project Compass in full. 7 hands went up. Walsh and one other board member kept their hands down, defiant to the end. Thank you, Dana said. Implementation begins Monday. Share this with someone who needs to see what real accountability looks like. Tag someone who's been fighting for change in their workplace and tell them they're not alone. Because what happens next proves that systems can actually transform. 48 hours after that board vote, Bloomberg ran a headline, Apex Airlines adopts most aggressive anti-discrimination protocol in industry history. Investors reacted immediately. The stock jumped 9%. The market was rewarding an ethical stance for once. Union leaders praised the move. Civil rights organizations called it a blueprint. And Apex's competitors started panicking because they knew what was coming. If this worked, they'd have to do it too. Jennifer Walsh resigned 3 days later. Her statement was terse. I can't work under these conditions. Dana's response to the press was measured. Project Compass isn't for everyone. It's only for people who believe all customers deserve dignity. Richard Sterling, surprisingly, backed Dana publicly. Miss Walsh's departure proves we're serious about change. We're not here to make people comfortable. We're here to do what's right. 90 days after Project Compass launched, the metrics told a story that even the skeptics couldn't deny. Discrimination complaints were down 73%. Customer satisfaction scores were up 22%. Employee morale had increased 31%. The stock price had climbed 18% from its post-incident low, and 11 of the 23 corporate accounts that had fled were coming back. United Airlines announced an initiative inspired by Project Compass. Delta created a similar program. Southwest implemented dignity metrics. American Airlines hesitated, watched their market share decline, and eventually adopted their own version. The transformation was spreading. Comment below if you've ever seen a company actually change instead of just apologizing. Because this is what it looks like when words become action. After one particularly long board meeting, Sterling and Dana stood alone in the conference room. The sun was setting over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "You know, I'll probably lose my job eventually," Sterling said, not looking at her. Dana considered this. "Maybe, but you'll lose it doing the right thing. That's rare. Why did you give me the chance to reform instead of destroying me?" Dana turned to face him. "Because I don't believe in disposable people, Mr. Sterling. I believe in people who can learn. You're learning. That matters." What Sterling didn't know, what the board didn't know, was that while Project Compass was transforming Apex's culture, the FAA was completing its investigation into the maintenance issues Marcus Cole had leaked months earlier. 23 aircraft flying with deferred maintenance beyond federal limits. Safety warnings overridden to save money. The fine came swift and brutal. $45 million. But here's the twist that changed everything. The FAA didn't just fine Apex. They mandated Dana's Meridian system as the industry standard for safety reporting, real-time tracking, no more overrides, full transparency. And suddenly, Dana's contract wasn't worth $4.2 billion anymore. It was worth $7.8 billion, with expanded scope across multiple airlines. The woman it had dismissed, handcuffed, and humiliated had just saved its life. Because Dana Wyatt understood what most people miss. Power isn't about destruction, it's about transformation. And transformation is the longest, hardest, most beautiful kind of revenge. 6 months later, Dana Wyatt walked through O'Hare International Airport, Terminal 3, Concourse G, the same terminal, the same concourse, Gate K-17, the exact spot where it all began. Flight 4782 to San Francisco, same route, different seat. This time, first class, 3A. Upgraded voluntarily by the airline, not demanded, not fought for, given. The flight attendant who checked her boarding pass froze for half a second, recognition flashing across her face, a nervous smile. "Miss Wyatt, welcome aboard." Dana settled into her seat and pulled out her portfolio. Inside, documents outlined the next phase, Project Compass expansion, hotels, retail chains, the blueprint for transforming entire industries, one dignity clause at a time. The flight attendant approached, her voice careful but genuine. "Miss Wyatt, is there anything I can get you?" Dana looked up. "Just respect, but I see I already have that." The attendant's smile shifted, no longer nervous, but real. "You have more than respect. You have our gratitude." If you've ever wondered what victory actually looks like, it looks like this. Not fireworks, not revenge. Just a woman sitting in a seat she paid for, being treated like a human being. If that hits different for you, share this story right now. Someone in your life needs to see that change is possible. The man in seat 3B extended his hand as Dana sat down. Robert Chen, mid-60s, expensive suit, the kind of businessman who'd seen 1,000 airports and 1,000 deals. "I heard your story," he said. "Changed how I train managers at my company." Dana shook his hand. "What industry?" "Hospitality. Figured if airlines can change, hotels can too." Dana smiled. "That's exactly right." Chen settled back into his seat, then asked the question people always asked. "Can I ask, was it worth it? The fight?" Dana looked out the window at the planes, taxiing on the runway, the ground crews loading luggage, the machinery of aviation that she now had a hand in reshaping. Every bruise, every threat, every sleepless night. Yes. The engines powered up. Flight 4782 began its taxi to the runway. Dana closed her eyes as the plane ascended, feeling the familiar pull of gravity fighting against momentum. People ask if she planned this. If she knew what would happen when she booked that coach seat 6 months ago? The truth? She knew it might happen. She hoped it wouldn't. But she was prepared for either outcome. That's the difference between power and luck. Luck is what happens to you. Power is what you're ready for when it does. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Cole. Check airman flight went perfect. 3 new pilots certified. One of them reminded me why I still fly. Thank you for that second chance. Dana typed back, you earned it the first time. I just made sure they noticed. Comment below if you know someone who earned their shot but never got the chance. Tag them. Let them know you see them, because visibility matters. The previous week, Dana's mother had visited her office at Meridian Logistics. She'd stood in front of the model airplane Marcus had given Dana, the one inscribed with words about grounding herself in principle. Her mother had touched it gently, then turned to her daughter. You know what I'm proudest of? What, Mama? Not that you won, that you stayed kind while winning. And Dana had felt something catch in her throat. You taught me that. Her mother shook her head. No, baby. I taught you to survive. You taught yourself how to thrive and lift others. That's all you. The plane reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Then the captain's voice came through the speakers, confident and clear. Good afternoon. This is Captain Williams. Thanks for flying with us today. Dana's eyes opened. She recognized that voice. Captain Williams. One of the 3 pilots Marcus had just certified. One of the black women who now had a path that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Dana whispered to herself, so quietly that even Robert Chin beside her couldn't hear. This is what winning looks like. She opened her laptop and started typing an email to Christine Raymond. Subject line, Phase 2, Hospitality Industry. We've proven the model works in aviation. Time to scale. I'm thinking hotels first, then retail, then... She paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. Then she smiled and continued typing. No cameras recorded this moment. No news crews waited at the gate. Just a woman on a plane doing her work. The way it should have been the first time. The way it would be going forward. The equilibrium Dana found wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the presence of change. Systems don't stay fixed. They require constant maintenance, constant vigilance, constant courage. And as Flight 4782 crossed into California airspace, Dana Wyatt was already planning the next system that needed disrupting. Because here's what she'd learned. Once you've moved something everyone said was unmovable, you can't stop. You can only choose which mountain to move next. And Dana Wyatt was just getting started. You're probably wondering, what's the takeaway here? What's the lesson you can actually use when you're not a CEO with a $4 billion contract? When you're just a person trying to navigate systems that weren't built for you? Dana's success started with something anyone can do. Documentation. Marcus Cole's 47 incident reports. Bernice Bell's phone video. Not dramatic, not exciting, just thorough. Power without evidence is performance. Power with evidence is change. And if that resonates with you, if you've ever felt powerless because you couldn't prove what happened to you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the people who need to hear this might never find it unless you share it. Dana knew the contract language, Clause 12.7. She knew FAA regulations. She knew Illinois statute on phone calls. She knew her own irreplaceable value to Apex. They can dismiss you. They can't dismiss what you know. Comment below one right you have in your workplace or your school or your community that you didn't know about until recently. Your comment might teach someone else something that changes their life. Dana was angry. Rightfully so. But she didn't react. She strategized. Waiting in that holding cell, she was calculating. Revenge is satisfying for a moment. Reform is satisfying forever. Maybe you're not a CEO. Maybe you're a teacher facing discriminatory administrators, an employee watching workplace harassment, a customer being profiled in a store, a tenant dealing with landlord bias, a student navigating educational barriers. Share this video with someone who's fighting one of those battles right now. They need to see what's possible. Here's what Dana's story teaches us. First, prepare before you need to. Know your rights in your specific context. Document patterns, not just incidents. Build your evidence file. Second, understand leverage. What does the system need from you? What can you withhold or provide? Leverage isn't always obvious. Find it. Third, think bigger than yourself. Dana fought for 73 others, not just herself. Systems change when they have to serve everyone. Your fight is everyone's fight. Fourth, give the system a chance to reform. Dana could have destroyed Apex. She chose transformation instead. Reform systems last longer than destroyed ones. Fifth, prepare for the long game. This wasn't a 48-hour story. Dana is still implementing changes. Real change takes time. Are you willing? Will this work every time? No. Are their systems too broken to reform? Yes. Will you sometimes lose despite doing everything right? Unfortunately, yes. But Dana's story proves when you have preparation plus leverage plus strategy plus courage, you can move mountains. Or at least, you can move airlines. Remember Dana Wyatt's name, not because she's exceptional, though she is. Remember it because she represents every person who refused to accept that's just how things are. She represents you, the version of you that doesn't back down, the version that documents, the version that knows its worth, the version that changes systems instead of accepting them. If you're that version, or if you're trying to become that version, leave a comment. Say I'm documenting. Say I know my worth. Say something that tells the universe you're not accepting things as they are anymore. But the story isn't over, because systems have memory. And 3 months after Dana's quiet flight back to San Francisco, something happened that would test every principle she'd established. Something that would prove that victory isn't an ending, it's a checkpoint. And at the next checkpoint, Dana Wyatt would face a choice. Protect what she'd built or risk it all to go even further. 3 months after that quiet flight back to San Francisco, Dana Wyatt sat in a different kind of spotlight. The congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C. was nothing like a corporate boardroom. Harder chairs, harsher lights, cameras that belonged to the public, not to carefully managed PR teams. Senator Williams from the Transportation Committee leaned into his microphone. Miss Wyatt, your experience with Apex Airlines sparked a national conversation. Can you share what you've learned? Dana adjusted the microphone in front of her, her voice carrying the weight of 9 months of transformation. Senator, I learned that systems don't change because they want to. They change because they have to. And they only have to when the cost of staying the same exceeds the cost of transformation. She paused, letting that sink in. Project Compass isn't charity, it's profitable. Apex's stock is up 22% since implementation. Turns out, dignity is good business. If you're still watching, if this story is reminding you of your own fights, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what Dana says next is something every single person needs to hear. But here's what concerns me, Dana continued, her gaze sweeping across the panel of senators. We're treating this as an airline issue. It's not. It's a power issue. Wherever there's a power imbalance, there's potential for abuse. Aviation, healthcare, education, housing, policing. The pattern repeats. She opened a leather folder and slid a document across the witness table. Which is why I'm proposing the Dignity in Commerce Act. It requires federal contractors to adopt dignity clauses in their vendor agreements. It protects whistleblowers in all industries. It creates a federal database of discrimination complaints, and it funds independent bias auditing. Senator Hartley, a conservative from Texas, leaned back in his chair. Miss Wyatt, with all due respect, this seems like federal overreach. Dana's response was immediate, her voice steady. With respect, Senator, being dragged off a plane I paid for seemed like overreach too. This is just evening the scales. The gallery behind her erupted in scattered applause before the chairman's gavel restored order. Then something happened that no one expected. The committee chair called the next witness, George Roth. The operations manager who had Dana arrested walked to the witness table. He'd aged, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 9 months ago. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his microphone. I was wrong. His voice cracked on the second word. I don't say that lightly. I cost my company billions. I cost Miss Wyatt her dignity. I cost myself my career. But mostly, I cost 73 other people their peace of mind because I thought my authority mattered more than their humanity. The room went silent. Dana's face registered surprise, then something softer. Respect, maybe. Or recognition that redemption is possible when someone actually does the work. Miss Wyatt had every right to destroy me. But, Roth continued, she didn't. Apex offered me a settlement, severance in exchange for silence. I declined. Because silence is what got us here. If my testimony helps pass this law, maybe I can repay a fraction of the harm I caused. Comment below if you've ever watched someone genuinely own their mistakes. Share this with someone who needs to see that accountability looks like this. Not excuses, not deflection, just truth. Bernice Bell testified next. The 68-year-old woman who'd recorded everything stood at that same witness table, phone still in her purse, probably still charged and ready. I'm 68 years old. I've seen things change and not change. What Miss Wyatt did wasn't new, standing up for dignity. What was new was that she had the power to make them listen. Most of us don't. This law would give us that power. The Dignity in Commerce Act is still pending. It may pass, it may not. But the conversation Dana started isn't stopping. It's spreading, mutating, growing into something bigger than one woman and one airline. 1 year after the incident, O'Hare Terminal 3, Concourse G, Gate K17 looks exactly the same. Same gray carpet, same departure monitors, same gate number on the wall. But a young black woman in her 20s stops there, her carry-on wheels going still. Her companion notices, "You okay?" "Yeah, just this is the gate. Where it happened, where Dana Wyatt got arrested." And then changed everything. The young woman pulls out her phone and takes a photo of the gate marker. Her thumbs move across the screen, typing a caption. "Standing where Dana Wyatt stood, remembering why I fight." If that doesn't make you feel something, check your pulse. Like this video if you understand why places like this matter, why memory matters, why symbols matter. That same day, 800 miles away in Chicago, Dana Wyatt sat at her desk at Meridian Logistics. The wall behind her displayed 17 company logos, 17 organizations now using the Project Compass model, 17 systems that decided transformation was better than destruction. Her phone rang. "Miss Wyatt, we have a situation. One of our clients, a hotel chain in Atlanta, just had a viral incident." Dana's smile wasn't joy. It was readiness, the look of a soldier who knows the war isn't over. "Send me the details. Let's see what they need." She opened her portfolio, the same leather folder that had fallen on flight 4782, paper scattering across the aisle while security dragged her away. Inside, the same contract language, the same evidence, protocols, the same strategic frameworks. But there was one addition now, a framed letter from Bernice Bell, handwritten, 4 words, "Thank you for fighting." Systems have memory. They remember who challenged them. They remember who changed them. And most importantly, they remember that change is possible. Dana Wyatt isn't a superhero. She's a black woman who refused to accept humiliation as the price of travel, who documented everything, who knew her worth, who understood leverage, and who chose transformation over destruction. The airline industry remembers her. Capitol Hill remembers her. And most importantly, every person who's ever been told they don't belong remembers her. Because she proved something powerful. You don't need permission to demand dignity. You just need preparation, courage, and an unwillingness to accept things as they are. So here's my question for you. What system in your life needs a Dana Wyatt? And more importantly, could that Dana Wyatt be you? If this story moved you, if Dana's courage inspired you, if you believe systems can change, then do something. Subscribe to this channel. Not for me. For the next Dana Wyatt, who needs to see that their fight matters. For the next George Roth, who needs to see that redemption is possible. For the next Bernice Bell, who needs to know that witnessing injustice isn't enough. Sharing it is what creates change. Comment below. What system in your life needs changing? What's your clause 12.7? Because someone reading your comment might be facing the same system. Your words might be their catalyst. And share this story. Not because it's entertaining, though I hope it was. Share it because somewhere, right now, someone is being told they don't belong. And they need to know that Dana Wyatt fought back and won. The systems are watching. Make sure they know you're watching back. Project Compass, adopted by 17 companies. The Dignity in Commerce Act, pending Senate vote. Marcus Cole, now Director of Flight Standards, Apex Airlines. George Roth, Diversity and Inclusion Consultant. Yes, really. Bernice Bell, activism, still filming injustice. Dana Wyatt, still disrupting systems, still refusing to be moved. The fight continues.